I want you to picture the most ordinary evening you can imagine. Dinner on the table, the smell of food in the air, the sound of forks and knives, a family sitting together. That was supposed to be us. My name is Sara, and what I'm about to tell you is not something I ever thought I would be sharing with strangers on the internet. But I have learned that when something is done in the dark, it deserves to be brought into the light. My son Brad and I had always been close. Or at least I thought we had. He was my only child. I raised him on my own after his father left, when Brad was just 7 years old. I worked 2 jobs so that boy never went without. I was at every school play, every graduation, every milestone. Brad was my whole world, and then he married Tiffany. Now, I want to be careful here. I am not the kind of mother-in-law who dislikes every woman her son brings home. I tried with Tiffany. I genuinely did. I invited her to holidays. I bought her gifts. I was kind to her face, even when things felt off. But there was always something about Tiffany that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. She had a way of looking at you, like she was calculating something, like every kind gesture you offered her was being filed away for later use. I should have trusted that instinct. I did not. And what happened at that dinner table on a Tuesday, night in October, changed my life forever. Brad had called ahead and asked if they could come for dinner. He said Tiffany had something she wanted to discuss. Those words should have been my first warning. Tiffany never wanted to discuss anything. She wanted to demand things and call it a discussion. I made a full meal. Roast chicken, vegetables, rolls from scratch. I set the table properly. I lit a candle. I was trying. We sat down. We made small talk for about 10 minutes. And then Tiffany set her fork down, looked me dead in the eyes and said she had a business proposal. At my dinner table, over my roast chicken. She told me she wanted to open a yoga studio. She had already found the location, already spoken to a landlord, already designed the logo in her head. All she needed, she said, was the startup money. $50,000, and she wanted it from me. I looked at Brad. He was staring at his plate. I took a breath. I told her, as calmly and as kindly as I knew how, that I was not in a position to give anyone $50,000. I told her. I was sorry, but that was not something I could do. I wished her well with the business and suggested she look into small business loans. That is when everything fell apart. Tiffany's face changed. I have seen people get angry before. I have seen people cry, slam doors, raise their voices. But what came over Tiffany's face in that moment was something different. It was cold, it was deliberate, and it was frightening. She started yelling, telling me I was selfish, that I never supported Brad, that I never supported her, that I had always hated her. Her voice was getting louder and louder, and I just sat there, stunned. Brad still had not looked up from his plate. I told her to lower her voice. I told her that I would not be spoken to that way in my own home. And that is when she picked up her plate. I do not think I will ever forget that moment for as long as I live. The way her arm pulled back, the look in her eyes. I had exactly 1 second to react, and I ducked. The plate exploded against the wall behind me. Ceramic shards flew everywhere, and one of those shards caught the side of my face. I felt the sting before I felt the warmth. I reached up and my hand came away with blood. The cut was small, but it was deep. 5 stitches deep, as it turned out. I looked at Brad. He was finally looking up. And do you know what I saw on my son's face? Not horror. Not rage on my behalf. Panic. The kind of panic that comes when someone realizes they are in trouble. Not when they see their mother bleeding. I called the police. My hands were shaking when I dialed, but I called them. I pressed charges. And I want to be very clear about why. This was not about revenge. This was about the fact that a woman had thrown a ceramic plate at my head in my own home and drawn blood. If I had done nothing, what would have happened next time? The officers came, they took my statement, they photographed the wall, the broken pieces of the plate, and the cut on my face. And then they took Tiffany's statement, and then they took Brad's. My son, the boy I raised, the boy I sacrificed for, the boy I loved more than my own life, told the officers that it was an accident. That Tiffany had not meant to throw the plate, that she was just gesturing and it had slipped from her hands. Slipped. From her hands. I sat in my own kitchen, with a cloth pressed against my bleeding face, listening to my son lie to police officers on behalf of the woman who had just hurt me. I felt something break inside me that night, not the skin on my face, something deeper than that. But here is where the story takes a turn, and it is a turn that Tiffany never saw coming. 6 months before that dinner, I had installed a security camera system in my home. It was after a package had been stolen off my porch, and my neighbour had suggested it. I had cameras at the front door, the back door, and one in the corner of my dining room that I had honestly almost forgotten about. Almost. The officers reviewed the footage, and the footage showed everything. It showed Tiffany picking up the ice plate. It showed her winding her arm back. It showed her throwing it, not dropping it, not gesturing with it, throwing it, with force, directly at my head. It showed me ducking. It showed the plate shattering. It showed me reaching up to my face. There was nothing accidental about it. And the camera proved it. Tiffany was arrested that night. She was charged with assault and battery. And after the legal process ran its course, she was sentenced to 30 days in jail. Brad did not call me once during those 30 days. Not once. When Tiffany was released, I thought, naively I know, that maybe that would be the end of it. That she would come out humbled, that Brad would come to his senses, that we could all quietly move on with our lives, even if things between us were never the same. Instead, the harassment began. It started with text messages, from Tiffany, telling me I had ruined her life, telling me I was a vindictive old woman, telling me I would regret what I had done. Then it escalated. She started driving past my house, showing up at places she knew I would be, leaving things on my doorstep, and Brad was right there with her, my son, acting as her lookout, her driver, her cheerleader. He had gone from the boy who would not look up from his plate to the man who was helping his wife terrorize his mother. I went back to the police. I documented everything, screenshots of texts, dates, times, photographs, and I was granted a restraining order against both of them. They were legally required to stay away from me and my property. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. 3 months after the restraining order was filed, my phone rang. It was Brad. I almost did not answer. But something in me, that same part of me that had loved him since the moment he was born, made me pick up. He was crying. He told me that Tiffany had left him. When the money stopped, when she realised I was not going to be pressured, threatened, or frightened into giving her what she wanted, she was gone. She had never loved my son. She had loved what she thought she could get through him. And when that avenue closed, she found another door. Brad said he was sorry. He said it over and over. He said he did not know how things had gotten so far. He said he had made a terrible mistake and he wanted his mother back. I listened to every word. I let him finish. And then I told him the truth. I told him that I loved him. That I would always love him, because that kind of love does not have an off switch. But I told him that love does not erase betrayal. I told him that he had stood in my kitchen, with blood on my face, and lied to protect the person who put it there. I told him that he had helped harass me, frightened me, and made me feel unsafe in my own home. And I told him that I did not know how to come back from that. I was not sure I wanted to. I told him he was no longer welcome in my life. And then I said goodbye, and I hung up the phone. People always want to know if I regret it, if I regret pressing charges, if I regret the restraining order, if I regret that last phone call, and my answer is always the same. No, I do not regret protecting myself. I do not regret telling the truth. And I do not regret choosing my own peace over a relationship that had become dangerous to my well-being. What I regret is that it had to happen at all. I regret that my son made the choices he made. I regret that I spent so many years looking the other way at Tiffany's behaviour because I did not want to cause a problem. I regret that it took a plate, and blood, and a security camera, and a courtroom for me to finally say, enough, but I am still here, and I am okay. And sometimes, that has to be enough. If you are in a situation where the people who are supposed to love you are hurting you instead, please hear me when I say this. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to choose peace, even when it cost you everything you thought you knew. My name is Sara, and this is my story. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for future videos.